Welcome again to Canon Andrew White. And we've got a guest, Ian Hearn. And Ian's been employed as Royal Marine and more dangerous still. Andrew, he was your bodyguard, wasn't he?
Well, used to be our personal security detail in Iraq in the most dangerous time in the midst of the war.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't take on the job, Ian, quite frankly. I mean, you've got a live one there, haven't you? I mean, he goes for everything. Does he see danger at all?
I think he does, but he seems to it seems to go over his head. My job is always to mitigate risk. Andrew's is always to take risks. So never the twain shall meet.
Yes. Well, his famous phrase, of course, is don't take care, take risks. So that's the philosophy, isn't it?
That really was his philosophy. Yes. Yeah.
Now, in a situation, for example, Baghdad, you're going out down a dodgy street. What do you have to prepare for?
It depends on the area, of course, that you're operating in, and of course what type of vehicle that you're in, whether a soft-skin vehicle or an armored vehicle. And you're looking for unusual sights, cars that perhaps have been abandoned, people staring at you, or holding unusually large packages. And so you're trying all the time to mitigate as much as you can, mitigate risk as much as you can. And of course, you try not to go into the areas that you know are going to be dangerous or that you've had intelligence warnings about previously. So in Andrew's case, picking him up from the St George's Church in Haifa Street. Haifa
Which was
Street,
the most dangerous road in Iraq.
Haifa Street was one of the most heavily bombed areas of Iraq and of Baghdad, I should say. And of course, going to St George's Church was always a dangerous operation. And
People couldn't believe that you'd want to do that, could they?
certainly not. And as I say, our job is really to mitigate risk. So my operations team, had kittens every time I said I was going down to St George's Church to see Andrew White, because of course their job was to say, well, if it's not an essential trip, if it's not an essential meeting, then we shouldn't do it. And on one occasion, as we just visited St George's Church and the clinic there, and as we left, within probably about half an hour of us leaving, a massive bomb went off, a massive IED, and destroyed the clinic and destroyed and blew all the windows out of St George's Church. We missed it by about 20 minutes.
Golly.
I didn't, I was still there.
Yes.
Wiping the dust off.
Yes. Well, difference between day and night, is it just too risky to do any of this at night?
No, I mean we did operate at night, but of course you're governed in Iraq, or you were in Baghdad certainly, by curfews. So depending on what the Iraqi army or the Iraqi police had in place, you could operate up to certain times of the evening. But generally speaking, there would be curfews, and if there was an operational or an intelligence threat, then of course you were detailed off to be operating at certain times. So we were governed very much by the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police.
Now, ex Royal Marine, the training is tough, the life is tough, but do you miss it now?
I do miss it. My body doesn't. I'm paying the price. Now I've had arthritic problems. I've had a double hip replacement. I've had shoulder operations, decompression surgery, 5 operations on my shoulders, and that was probably due to the intense training and the operations that we did whilst I was in service. Funnily enough, we still keep in touch. My old troop, my old 269 troop, and I think of the 16 or so of us that are still around, virtually all of us have had a hip replacement or knee replacements at an early age. I had I had a double hip replacement when I was only 55, 53.
Yeah,
So, it's quite young to be having double hip replacements.
indeed. You hear of athletes at the highest level having terrible trouble, and you wonder, golly, is it worth all the? Well, it'll happen eventually, but probably 20 years earlier than it should happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, going back to Iraq, Andrew misses a lot, I know there, especially the heat. I don't know, he's a junkie on heat. You've had a good spring in the United Kingdom. It's changed now, of course, as it always does when there are a certain amount of school holidays. But talking about the weather there, I mean, it must sap your energies.
It does, and it's something you do get used to. It's not just the heat; it's the humidity. It's like walking into an oven. It's the humidity is the killer. But of course, we're wearing body armor as well. So once you're wearing body armor and you're carrying a weapon and you've got all your magazines, you
And
know,
helmets.
and helmets. Well, only our clients wore the helmets. We never wore helmets, but certainly the body armor was heavy enough on top of your full kit.
Why,
So
why didn't you wear helmets?
we just never did. There wasn't a particular reason to. If there was if there was a warning, if we were in a building and a warning went up that there was going to be a incoming mortar or something like that, then we would reach for helmets. But generally speaking, if you're in an armored vehicle, then there's no real need to wear a helmet.
When you look back on the occasion, Iraq I'm talking about,
Hmm.
how sanguine are you or are you not with political leadership from Britain, from America? Did they get it right?
Well, I think obviously the jury's out on that. I don't think anybody could say that they got it right. There was never a plan in place for once
Yes.
once they had invaded the
Yeah.
country, what happened next. They certainly weren't ready for all the factions that we became aware of within Iraq. It's a very tribal nation. So each area has its own sheikh and or its governor, and whether it was Sunni or Shia or whatever they were, you didn't operate without their permission. So that was, and then on top of that, you've got the Iraqi police that didn't get on with the Iraqi army, and the fighting factions within the Iraq society were something that the British and the Americans never considered, and certainly didn't have anything in place. 10 years after the war, there was still lack of electricity, lack of water. The infrastructure had not been rebuilt, had not been put back in place, and of course the population were annoyed at that. So they turned against. I think the forces thought that they would be welcomed with open arms, and that certainly wasn't the case because they destroyed much of the infrastructure within the country, and people were left without.
They were welcomed for one day.
Yeah, yeah.
One day in 203. And they thought, oh, liberation is coming. But liberation didn't come.
It sounds like total chaos, basically. And you think of today's problem with Gaza, Hamas, and co.
Hmm.
It's chaos again, isn't it? I mean, what way do we go
And
forward?
it's multifaceted because you're not just dealing with religious tensions and differences, you're dealing with families, tribes, and political tension. So at every single level, there is division. And it's not who are we, it's who are we not. And one of the most difficult things was that we had to learn to listen and listen to our enemies. Who is my enemy? It's the person I do not talk to.
I mean, did you actually ever give up with a particular group and say, waste of time talking to them? They've got so fixed in their ways.
Well, that wasn't something that we, as a security company, got involved with really. But I think that's a question that you could certainly ask of the embassy staff. they'll probably have a better idea of just how difficult things were to get things moving and to get infrastructure built.
Yeah. I mean, were you happy at the time with the backup that you received, or do you feel on your own?
Oh no, I mean there was two sides to that. First of all, when we first arrived, of course, we had the backing of the Americans and the British forces whilst they were there. Uh, Also, we as a private security company, we operated a buddy system, if you like. So between all the security companies, we all looked out for each other. So we were always in radio communication with all our comrades in different companies. But certainly then we had the backing of the Americans and the British, and we had a comm center. So every route, every operation that we did would go through the American call center as well. So they would know exactly where we were at all times and be able to give us backup if needed. Once they left, of course, once the Americans pulled out and the British had already pulled out, then of
That
course
was terrible.
we were certainly feeling it that we were on our own, and we were waiting for the backlash then, because we felt relatively secure whilst we had that backup. Once they'd gone, we didn't really know what to expect. Fortunately, we didn't come across too much, but it was a more dangerous time.
From the point of view of the Americans, one of the biggest tensions we had to deal with in Iraq was the tensions between the American State Department and the Defense Department. So it was always State Department, embassy versus the DoD, Department of Defense. And people like Ian and I used to take more the side of the DoD.
Is it all to do with money?
No.
Not really. I mean, the other aspect, of course, is that we had to, as a private security company, we had to employ Iraqis, and we had a quota that we had to employ a certain amount of Sunni and Shia. We had to employ equal numbers of both. Now, of course, that in itself drew up problems because the two didn't get on. But yet we had to employ them together in a security company and give them weapons. So it was a recipe for disaster. So our aim really was to be as close as we could with the Iraqi Ministry of Interior, and we spent a lot of our time winning the hearts and minds of the senior staff within the Iraqi Interior Ministry, because without their support, our job would have been even harder.
Sounds like the ultimate nightmare of diversity, equality, and inclusivity, that when you've got stated aims and it's not the best man for the job. It's
Absolutely.
Just,
And I mean, we had a situation. I got called into the British Embassy by somebody within the political section. The political section is effectively referred to as MI6. So I get called into the British Embassy and say, "Do you recognize?" Shown a photograph of a person. Do you recognize this person? A Shield he was called, and I said, "Yes, yeah, he's one of our guards." Where does he work? I said, "Well, we're guarding the empty Pakistan embassy, waiting for the Pakistanis to come back." And he said, "Well, actually, it's being used as a bomb making factory. This guy is Al Qaeda. He's under surveillance, and he's making IEDs." So it was a bit of a shock to the system to know that we'd employed
yes.
somebody from Al Qaeda. And of course, we were told not to do anything, but let the forces that be take control.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting from a Christian point of view, trying to do ministry there, when you suddenly found yourself actually involved in most incredible things politically via the church. And one of the things that Ian did for us first was he did something really stupid. There in Iraq,
part of the
in
course.
60 degrees centigrade, he brought all the children Cadbury's cream eggs.
Oh,
And Cadbury's cream eggs, when they melt, they cause a mess.
yes,
But
absolutely.
they're still lovely, though.
I served them with a spoon.
That's all right. Then, of course, we have deep fried, battered fried eggs, especially in Scotland. So there you go. We're jumping on board. Let's go briefly back to the situation. And obviously, in the front line, you are close to death on a number of occasions. How did you cope with that?
Um, it was a good question, really. I suppose, we were, we were a private security company, we were all civilians, but we were all ex-Royal Marines. In fact, my business partner was former SBS. Most of the team were either ex-Special Forces or Royal Marines. So you rely heavily on your training and your past training and your past experience. But once you're actually in theatre, you tend to your training takes over, and you don't actually, if you were scared or if you were nervous, you wouldn't be able to do your job. So you really do rely on your training.
So you go into automatic gear basically. When you're in a one-to-one situation, it's either you or him. Do you look back on that in the evening and say, "Golly, I've just killed this person"?
That never happened in Iraq. I said at the start, our job really was to mitigate risk. So our first act would, if we came under fire, would be to get out of there, as opposed to stop and return fire, which would probably happen if you were in the Marines in an operation. You would return fire. But as a private security company, your job is to mitigate risk and just try and leave the area without returning any fire. But so that never happened in Iraq. I have been in situations whilst in the Marines where I've opened fire, and particularly once in Northern Ireland, and I was only 19 at the time, and that particular incident, which I won't go into, that still lives with me, and it's something that as a Christian I've been able to pray and ask God for His forgiveness, although I was doing my job.
Yeah, very difficult. Next question was about faith. Obviously, your faith helped you in that situation, but in the front line situation, how does your faith work then?
Well, my faith has grown stronger over the years. I mean, I spent a long time. Don't get me wrong. I'm a son of a pastor. I've been brought up in the Christian church, and but I spent a long time fighting against Christ and fighting against Christianity, but always found myself being pulled back. And as you get older and as you become wiser, perhaps, my faith has really grown stronger. And in every situation now, I try and put God first and pray and put my trust in God.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, final word with you. This man is important to you. You're always mentioning him to me.
Yes, he
Before
was
I,
my right-hand man. And it's wonderful to have him here. And it's incredible to actually come together all these years later, and our thoughts and aims and spirituality is still the same. And we love the Lord and we love what He has called us to do, and we do not mind taking risks. And we still take risks today. Even if it's just talking with you.
yeah, That is terribly risky. I'll take that opportunity to do an out. Thank you so much, you two.